The price tag on the hero's soul was neon orange and read $5. It sat crookedly on the folded triangle of fabric, tossed carelessly into a plastic laundry basket labeled miscellaneous in thick black marker. The sun beat down on the suburban driveway, bleaching the colors of a lifetime's accumulation of objects, stripping them of their history and reducing them to mere commodities for hagglers. There was no honor guard here. There was no folded silence. There was only the low murmur of neighbors picking through the bones of a life they never bothered to understand, looking for a bargain among the wreckage of a man named Mr. Peterson. The wind rustled the leaves of the oak tree he had likely planted decades ago, a solitary witness to the final indignity unfolding on the concrete below. Robert stood at the edge of the driveway, his hands deep in the pockets of his denim jacket. He was a man who understood the weight of things, a collector not of trinkets, but of stories that were in danger of evaporating. He had seen the estate sale listing online. Military items, vintage tools, furniture, everything must go. The phrase always chilled him. Everything must go. It was the mantra of a society that had lost the ability to sit still with the past. He watched a woman in activewear pick up a heavy, cast-iron skillet, inspect the rust on the bottom, and put it back with a grimace. He watched a teenager flip through a stack of vinyl records bored, tossing them aside like playing cards. But mostly, Robert watched the daughter. She stood behind a folding card table, a metal cash box open before her. Linda, as a neighbor had called her, looked exhausted, but not with grief. She was exhausted with the logistics of erasure. She checked her watch every few minutes, her eyes scanning the dwindling pile of items, not with nostalgia, but with the calculation of someone estimating how much space she would clear in the dumpster she had rented, which now sat like a gaping maw at the curb. To her, this house was a burden. The objects were obstacles. The man who had owned them was gone, and his silence had been replaced by the noise of commerce. Robert moved forward, his boots crunching softly on the asphalt. He bypassed the tables of kitchenware and the racks of moth-eaten coats. He had a radar for the forgotten, a sixth sense that vibrated when he was near something that held a charge. He felt it now, pulling him toward the plastic basket near the garage door, sitting in the shadow of a rusted lawnmower. He knelt. The basket was filled with the detritus of an old man's desk. Tangled charging cables, a broken stapler, a handful of dried-up ballpoint pens, and a stack of Reader's Digest magazines from the late 90s. And there, buried beneath a plastic bag of rubber bands, was the flag. It was folded, but not correctly. The edges were loose, the triangle distinct but sloppy, as if it had been done in a hurry or by hands that shook with age or infirmity. It wasn't encased in a triangular wood and glass shadow box like the ceremonial flags given to families at funerals. It was naked, exposed to the dust and the heat. Robert reached in, his hand brushed against the cotton. It wasn't the slick synthetic feel of modern nylon flags made in foreign factories. This was heavy, coarse cotton weave, American-made, vintage. He hooked his finger under the fold and lifted it. The weight was wrong. It was too heavy. A standard flag, even a high-quality cotton one, has a specific heft. It flows. This bundle felt dense, rigid in the center. It felt like a brick wrapped in cloth. Robert held it in both hands, feeling a strange resistance within the layers. He brought it closer to his face, shielding his eyes from the glare. The blue field of stars was faded. The white stars yellowed to the color of old parchment. This was a flag that had seen the sun, perhaps too much of it, but it was the smell that stopped him. It didn't smell like a cedar chest or mothballs, the typical sense of preserved heirlooms. It smelled of old iron. It smelled of earth and something metallic and sharp a scent that triggered a primal recognition in the back of Robert's brain. He turned the folded triangle over in his hands. That was when he saw the edge of it. On the third fold, tucked deep inside where the fabric was pulled tight, the white stripe wasn't white. It was a dark, crusty brown. The discoloration wasn't a smear of grease from the garage. It had stiffened the fabric, fusing two layers together in a brittle bond. It looked like rust, but rust doesn't seep into cotton like that. Rust stays on the surface. This had soaked through, saturated the fibers, and then dried over decades, locking a moment in time into the very weave of the nation's symbol. Robert's heart hammered a slow, heavy rhythm against his ribs. He knew what that color was. He knew what that stiffness meant. "Hey, buddy!" The voice snapped him back to the driveway. A man in a baseball cap was standing over him, looking down at the basket. "You gonna buy that or just pray over it?" Robert looked up, his expression unreadable. "I'm looking." "Well, look faster. I need that extension cord underneath it." Robert didn't move. He kept his hands firmly on the flag. He slowly stood up, the flag cradled against his chest, shielding it from the man's impatience. He walked over to the table where Linda was counting a stack of $1 bills. "Excuse me," Robert said. His voice was low, gravelly. Linda didn't look up immediately. "Everything is priced as marked. If it doesn't have a sticker, make me an offer. Cash only." "This has a sticker," Robert said. He placed the flag on the table. He did it gently, as if placing an infant into a crib. The orange $5 sticker screamed against the faded blue. Linda glanced at it and sighed. "Oh, that. Yeah, Dad had a bunch of old patriotic stuff. Mum was the same way. We kept the one from the funeral, obviously. That one was just sitting in a trunk in the basement. It's probably dirty." "It is dirty," Robert said, watching her eyes. He was looking for a flicker of recognition, a hint that she knew what this object actually was. He saw nothing but mild annoyance. "Did you look at it? Did you unfold it?" Linda let out a short, incredulous laugh. "Unfold it? Why would I do that? It's a flag. It's $5. Do you want it or not? I have a guy coming at 4 o'clock to take everything that's left to the dump." "The dump?" The word hung in the air between them, vibrating with a violence that Linda couldn't perceive. She was going to throw this into a landfill. She was going to let heavy machinery crush this fabric into the mud, alongside broken toasters and bags of kitchen trash. "You were going to throw this away?" Robert asked, the incredulity seeping into his tone despite his best efforts to remain calm. "It's old, it's stained, and it smells funny," Linda said defensively, crossing her arms. "Look, mister, my dad was a complicated man. He kept a lot of junk. We've been clearing this house for 3 weeks. I'm tired. If you don't want it, put it back in the bin." Robert looked at the flag, then back at her. "I'll take it." He reached into his wallet. He didn't pull out a 5. He pulled out a 20. He placed it on the table. "Keep the change," he said. Linda blinked, surprised by the sudden generosity. She snatched the bill before he could change his mind. "Sold. Do you need a bag? I think we have some grocery bags somewhere." "No," Robert said. "I don't need a bag." He picked up the flag again. Now it was his. Legally, the transaction was complete. The exchange of currency had severed the tie between the Peterson family and this object. But ethically, spiritually, the weight of it had just increased tenfold. Robert turned to walk away, to take the flag to his car, to rescue it from this place of indifference. But he couldn't. He took 2 steps and stopped. The heat of the driveway radiated through the soles of his boots. The chatter of the yard sale buzzed like angry flies. He looked down at the triangle in his hands. The stain seemed to burn through the fabric, warming his palms. If he walked away now, the story would end here. He would take it home, clean it properly, or preserve it, and place it in a display case. Mr. Peterson would be honored in anonymity. But Linda would go on believing her father was just a man who hoarded patriotic stuff. She would go on believing that the stain was just dirt. She would finish her day, count her cash, and leave this house without ever knowing who had lived inside it. That was the tragedy. Not the death of the man, but the death of his memory. Robert turned back around. He walked back to the table. The man in the baseball cap was now haggling over a set of socket wrenches. Robert waited, his shadow falling over the table, casting a pall over the cash box. Linda looked up, startled. "Did you forget something? I need to show you something," Robert said. It wasn't a request. "I'm really busy," Linda said, gesturing to the 3 other people browsing. "It will take 2 minutes," Robert said, "and it's about your father." Something in his tone, a command born of absolute certainty, made Linda pause. She looked at the man in the baseball cap. "1 second, sir." She looked back at Robert. "Okay. What? Did you find money inside it or something?" "If you did, that's technically mine, not money," Robert said. He placed the flag back on the table, right in the center, pushing aside a stack of romance novels. "I need you to look at this stain." He pointed to the dark, crusted discoloration peeking out from the fold. Linda wrinkled her nose. "Ooh, yeah, I saw that. That's why it was in the $5 bin. It's probably oil or coffee or something gross. Dad spent a lot of time in the garage." "It's not oil," Robert said softly. He ran his thumb over the hardened fabric. "Oil makes fabric translucent. It stays slick. This is stiff, it's organic." "Organic?" Linda stepped back slightly. "What are you talking about?" "This is blood, Linda," Robert said. The chatter of the yard sale seemed to drop away. The man with the wrenches stopped moving. Linda stared at him, her mouth slightly open. "Blood," she whispered. "Why would there be blood on his flag? He didn't die at war. He died in a nursing home 3 towns over. He had dementia." "He didn't die at war," Robert agreed, "but he lived through one. Do you know what unit he served with?" Linda hesitated. She looked flustered, embarrassed by her lack of knowledge. The army. He never talked about it, ever. Mum said he was a clerk or a cook or something. He never went to parades. He never went to the VFW. He just worked at the hardware store and came home." "The silent ones," Robert murmured. "They are always the ones who carry the most." He looked at the flag. "This isn't a ceremonial flag. The dimensions are different. This is a field flag, and it wasn't folded for a funeral." Robert's hands hovered over the corners of the triangle. "What are you doing?" Linda asked, her voice rising in pitch. "You can't unfold it. It's disrespectful to unfold a flag once it's been done, isn't it? It's disrespectful to leave the truth hidden in a laundry basket," Robert said. "And this wasn't folded out of respect. It was folded for survival. If you believe every life holds a story worth remembering, and that the silence of our veterans often speaks louder than words, subscribe to this channel and join our community." Robert's fingers worked the first tuck. The fabric was stubborn, molded by time into this shape. As he pulled the first corner free, a puff of stale air escaped, the breath of 1968, or perhaps 1951. "He was a cook," Linda insisted, though her voice was wavering. "That's what he told us. He peeled potatoes. Cooks don't use their flags as tourniquets," Robert said. He pulled the first layer open. The triangle became a trapezoid. The stain grew larger. It wasn't just a spot. It was a long, jagged smear that traversed the stripes. Dark, dried, and violent. The crowd at the yard sale had begun to gather. Humans are drawn to spectacle, but they are anchored by mystery. They sensed the shift in the atmosphere. The transaction had become a theatre of revelation. A neighbour, an older woman with a sun hat, stepped closer, clutching a ceramic vase she intended to buy. "That's blood, all right," the woman whispered. "I was a nurse. I know that colour." Linda looked from the flag to Robert. But why? Why would he keep it? Why didn't he clean it? "Because you don't wash away a promise," Robert said. He continued to unfold. As the flag opened further, revealing the star field, the structural integrity of the fabric failed. It didn't flap open into a rectangle. It fell apart in the middle. There was a massive, jagged slit running through the center of the flag. Linda gasped. "It's ripped." "No," Robert corrected, tracing the edge of the tear. "It's cut. Look at the fibers. This was done with a knife, a sharp one, in a hurry." He lifted the two sections, held together only by the hem. "You don't cut a flag unless you have no other choice. Unless the fabric is worth less than the life you are trying to save." He looked at the positioning of the stain relative to the cut. Someone was bleeding out. Badly. Someone didn't have medical supplies. So they took the only thing they had. They took the flag off their uniform, or out of their pack, and they cut it into strips to bind a wound. Robert's eyes scanned the fabric. He was looking for the missing piece. If this was used as a tourniquet, a strip would be missing, but the flag, though cut, was mostly intact. It had been used as a compress, a pressure bandage. "He pressed this against a wound," Robert said, his voice trembling slightly with the intensity of the visualization. "He held it there, probably for hours." Linda was silent now. The impatience was gone, replaced by a pale, stunned confusion. He saved someone. "Or he tried to," Robert said. "He kept this. He brought it home. He hid it in a trunk. He folded it so the blood was on the inside, hidden from the world, hidden from you." "Why?" Linda asked, tears pricking her eyes. "Why wouldn't he tell us he was a hero?" "Because the word hero is heavy, Linda. Sometimes it's too heavy to carry around the dinner table. Sometimes the person who bleeds into the flag isn't the one who comes home." Robert prepared to open the final fold, the one that would reveal the center of the star field. This was the heart of the flag. "There's something else," Robert said. He could feel it. The lump he had sensed earlier wasn't just the stiffness of the blood. There was something solid inside the final crease. "What is it?" Linda asked. She leaned in, her hand resting on the metal cash box for support. "I think," Robert said, "your father didn't just hide a stain. I think he hid a name." He flipped the last fold open. The flag lay flat on the card table, draped over the romance novels and the price stickers. It was a map of violence. The blood stain was a massive dark continent in the center of the stripes. But there, stitched awkwardly into the white stripe just below the blue field, was embroidery. It wasn't done by a machine. It was done by hand, with black thread, likely using a sewing kit from a ration pack. The stitches were uneven, frantic. Linda leaned over, squinting. "What does it say?" Robert ran his finger over the thread. "It's a name, but it's not Peterson." He read the name aloud. "CPL, J. Miller." "Miller?" Linda shook her head. "We don't know a Miller. We don't have any Millers in the family." "No," Robert said. "This isn't family. This is the man who bled." He looked closer. Below the name, there was something else, a date, and below the date, a series of numbers. "Coordinates," Robert whispered. "Coordinates?" Linda asked. "Latitude and longitude," Robert said, his mind racing. Why would he stitch coordinates onto a blood-soaked flag? He looked up at Linda, his eyes piercing. "Your father didn't just save this flag, he created a map. He marked a spot. This isn't a souvenir, Linda. It's a marker." The wind picked up, lifting the corner of the flag slightly, as if trying to turn a page. "He never went back." Robert realized aloud. He came home. He raised you. He worked at the hardware store. He got old. He got dementia. But he never went back to this spot. Linda was crying now, silent tears tracking through her makeup. He used to have nightmares, she whispered. When I was little, I'd hear him shouting. Mum would just say, "Don't go in there, Linda. Daddy is fighting his ghosts." I thought he was just angry. He wasn't angry, Robert said gently. He was haunted. He looked at the coordinates again. They were specific, down to the second. Do you have a phone? Robert asked. Linda nodded, pulling her smartphone from her pocket with trembling hands. Type these in, Robert commanded. He read the numbers off the bloody fabric. Linda's thumbs tapped on the glass screen. The yard sale had come to a complete standstill. Even the teenagers were watching. The air was thick with the heavy gravity of the past, intruding on the present. It's loading, Linda said. She stared at the screen. Her eyes went wide. Where is it? Robert asked. It's in the middle of nowhere, Linda said. It's a jungle, Vietnam. No, wait. She zoomed out. It's a valley, Ashau Valley. Robert closed his eyes. 1969, Hamburger Hill, or nearby. There's nothing there, Linda said. Just trees. That's what the satellite sees, Robert said. But your father saw something else. He stitched it here so he wouldn't forget. Or maybe... Robert paused. A chill went down his spine that had nothing to do with the weather. Maybe he stitched it because he left something behind, Robert said. Or someone. Wait, Robert said. He noticed a small raised bump in the hem of the flag near the embroidery. He had missed it because he was focused on the blood. There's something sewn inside the hem, he said. Inside, Linda asked. He opened the seam and put something in, then sewed it back up. Robert felt it. It was hard, flat, circular. It feels like a coin, or a dog tag, Linda breathed. Too small for a dog tag, Robert said, and a dog tag would have been worn. He looked at Linda. Do I have your permission to open the hem? I bought the flag, it's mine, but this feels like something you need to see. Linda nodded frantically. Open it, please. Robert took a small penknife from his pocket. With the precision of a surgeon, he slipped the blade under the black thread your father had stitched 50 years ago. Snip, snip, snip. The thread gave way. The hem opened. Something slid out and hit the metal cash box with a distinct clink. It wasn't a coin. It wasn't a medal. It was a ring, a simple gold wedding band. But it was crushed, flattened, as if it had been stepped on by a giant or run over by a tank. Linda picked it up. Her hands were shaking so hard she almost dropped it. She turned it over to look at the inscription inside the band. There's writing, she sobbed. It says, Forever, Sarah. Linda looked up at Robert, her face pale as a sheet. Who is Sarah? My mother's name was Martha. The silence that followed was deafening. The revelation hung in the air. A ghost invited to the yard sale. He didn't just leave a friend behind, Robert said, his voice hollow. He brought back a ring that didn't belong to him, and he kept it for 50 years. Was he married before? Linda asked, panic rising. Did he have a secret family? No, Robert said, looking at the crushed gold. I don't think this was his ring. I think this was Miller's ring. Corporal Miller, the name on the flag. Why keep it? Linda asked. Why not send it to Sarah? That, Robert said, staring at the coordinates, is the question that has been rotting in this fabric for half a century. Why did he keep the ring? Why did he mark the spot? And why, in all his years, did he never, ever say the name Miller? Robert looked at the flag, then at the ring, then at the daughter who had almost thrown it all in the dumpster. I think, Robert said, your father made a promise he couldn't keep. Or maybe he made a promise he was waiting to keep until the very end. He looked at the date stitched below the name. May 14th, 1969. "Linda," Robert said. "What is today's date?" Linda looked at her phone. She gasped, a sound of pure, unadulterated shock. "It's May 14th, she whispered. Robert felt the hair on his arms stand up. "He died 2 weeks ago," Linda said. "He was holding on. He was waiting." "No," Robert said, looking at the flag. "He wasn't waiting. He was passing the torch. He knew you would sell the house. He knew you would clear the desk. He left this where it could be found." "But I almost threw it away," Linda cried. "I put it in the $5 bin." "But you didn't throw it away," Robert said, "and I found it. Coincidence is just God's way of remaining anonymous, Linda." He picked up the flag and the ring. "We aren't done," Robert said. "This isn't just a relic. This is a mission. We have a name. We have a date. We have a ring. And we have coordinates." He looked at Linda. "We have to find Sarah." Linda looked at the piles of junk around her, the trivial, meaningless objects of a life she thought she knew. Then she looked at the blood-stained flag in the hands of a stranger. "How?" she asked. "It's been 50 years. Sarah could be dead. Miller is definitely dead." "The VA records," Robert said. "I have contacts. I can find out who Corporal Miller was. I can find out who his next of kin is." He paused, looking at the stain one last time. "But I need to know one thing before we start," Robert said. "If we find out something terrible, if we find out why your father never sent this ring back, are you ready to know who he really was? Even if he wasn't the hero we think he is? Even if he was the villain?" Linda stared at the crushed ring. She thought of her father, silent, staring out the window for hours. The man who never asked for anything. The man whose secrets were now unspooling in the afternoon sun. She wiped her eyes and looked at Robert. "He was my father," she said. "I need to know the truth, whatever it costs." Robert nodded. He folded the flag, careful to keep the ring safe inside the blood-stained folds. He didn't put it in a bag. He carried it like a holy relic. "Then pack up the sail, Linda," Robert said. "We have work to do." As Robert walked toward his car, the sun began to dip below the horizon, casting long shadows across the lawn. The wind died down. The flag in his hands felt heavier than ever. He knew, with a certainty that chilled his bones, that the stain on the flag was only the beginning of the story. The real wound was still open, somewhere out there in the world, waiting to be healed. The engine of Robert's vintage truck hummed a low, steady note as they drove through the rain-slicked streets of the next county. Beside him, Linda sat in silence, the folded flag resting on her lap like a bomb that had been defused but could still detonate at any moment. The windshield wipers sliced back and forth, a metronome counting down the miles to a truth that had been buried for half a century. They had spent the last 24 hours in a fever state of investigation. Robert had called in every favor he had owed. He had spoken to archivists in Washington, dug through digitized causality reports from 1969, and cross-referenced the coordinates stitched onto the blooded cotton. The picture that emerged was fragmented, like a stained glass window shattered by a stone, but the pieces were sharp enough to cut. Corporal James Jimmy Miller, age 19, killed in action, May 14th, 1969. Ashau Valley. Cause of death: small arms fire and mortar shrapnel during an extraction attempt. His body had been recovered, but his personal effects were listed as lost in transit. And then there was Sarah. It wasn't difficult to find her, which was almost more tragic than if she had vanished. She hadn't moved to a tropical island. She hadn't become a recluse in the mountains. She was right where the record said she was, inside the walls of Oak Haven, a state-subsidized assisted living facility only 40 miles from where Linda's father had sat in his armchair for decades, staring at nothing. "Do you think she knows?" Linda asked, her voice small against the drumming of the rain on the roof. "Do you think she knows he had it all this time?" "I don't know," Robert replied, keeping his eyes on the grey road ahead. "But silence acts like a wall, Linda. On one side, you have the person hiding the secret, thinking they are protecting everyone. On the other side, you have the people who are left wondering. Your father built a wall. Today, we take a sledgehammer to it." Linda looked down at the flag. She ran her fingers over the rough embroidery of the coordinates. "I keep thinking about the ring. Why was it crushed? Why is it so flat? It looks like it was destroyed on purpose." "War doesn't have a purpose," Robert said. "It only has consequences. The ring is a witness. Whatever happened to that gold happened to the man wearing it. Your father brought back the witness. We just have to find out why he never let it testify." They pulled into the parking lot of Oak Haven. It was a drab brick building that smelled of industrial cleaning agents and boiled vegetables, even from the outside. It was a place where society stored the people it had no time for, the veterans and the widows who had outlived their utility. This was the battlefield of the elderly. The silence, the waiting, the slow fade into obscurity. Robert killed the engine. The silence in the cab was heavy. "Are you ready?" he asked. Linda took a deep breath, clutching the flag to her chest. "No, but let's go." Inside, the air was thick and warm. The fluorescent lights buzzed with a headache-inducing frequency. Robert led the way to the front desk, his boots heavy on the linoleum. A nurse with tired eyes looked up from a computer screen. "We're here to see Sarah Miller," Robert said. "Or Sarah Jenkins. We aren't sure if she remarried." The nurse typed for a moment. "Sarah Miller, room 304. She's in the memory care wing. She doesn't get many visitors." She looked at them with a mixture of curiosity and pity. "Are you family?" "We are old friends," Robert lied smoothly. "From way back." The walk to room 304 felt like a march. They passed open doors where grey-haired figures sat in wheelchairs, watching televisions that were too loud, or sleeping with their mouths open, waiting for a dinner that tasted like nothing. This was the last oath of the generation that saved the world, to end their days in beige rooms, visited only by nurses who were overworked and underpaid. If this story touched your heart, and you believe we must do better for those who carried the weight of history, click like and subscribe to honor those who served. Room 304 was at the end of the hall. The door was open. Inside, sitting by the window that looked out onto a wet parking lot, was a woman. She was tiny, her frame shrunken by time, her white hair thinned to a wisp. She sat in a floral armchair that seemed to swallow her whole. Her hands, gnarled with arthritis, rested on her lap, kneading a tissue that had been shredded to confetti. She didn't turn when they entered. "Sarah?" Robert said softly. The woman's head turned slowly. Her eyes were milky, clouded by cataracts. She was blind, or nearly so. "Who is it?" Her voice was like dry leaves scraping together. "Is it time for pills?" "No, ma'am," Robert said, stepping closer, but keeping a respectful distance. "My name is Robert, and this is Linda. We came to bring you something." Sarah frowned, a network of wrinkles deepening on her forehead. "I don't need anything. I don't buy magazines. I don't need Jesus. I have him right here." She tapped her chest. "It's not magazines, Sarah," Linda spoke up, her voice trembling. It's about Jimmy." The room went instantly still. The buzzing of the lights seemed to vanish. The shredding of the tissue stopped. Sarah's hands froze. "Jimmy," she whispered. The name hung in the air, a ghost summoned from the deep past. Nobody has said that name in, oh Lord, since the administration changed, since the world turned over." She leaned forward, her sightless eyes searching the darkness. "Who are you? Did you know him?" "I didn't know him," Linda said, tears starting to spill. "But my father did. My father he was with him. In the valley." Sarah's breath hitched. The valley! The terrible place! She reached out a hand, grasping at the air. "Come here, come closer, let me hear you." Linda stepped forward and took the old woman's hand. Sarah's grip was surprisingly strong, desperate. "Who was your father?" Sarah asked. "His name was Peterson. Sergeant Peterson," Linda said. Sarah's face contorted. It wasn't anger. It wasn't joy. It was a look of profound, agonizing recognition. "Peterson, the one who came back." "Yes," Linda said. "He came back." "He never wrote," Sarah said, her voice cracking. "Jimmy died, and I got a telegram. I got a box with a uniform, but I never got a letter from the boys who lived. I thought they had forgotten him. I thought he was just a number to them." "He didn't forget," Robert said. He stepped forward and placed the folded flag on the small table beside Sarah's chair. "He never forgot. Not for a single day." "What is that?" Sarah asked, turning her head toward the sound of the object hitting the table. "It's a flag," Robert said. "But not just any flag. It's the one your husband, your fiancé, bled on." Sarah gasped. Her hand flew to her mouth. "And there's something else," Robert said. He looked at Linda. "Show her." Linda reached into the folds of the flag, into the secret pocket her father had stitched, and pulled out the crushed gold ring. She took Sarah's other hand and turned it palm up. She placed the cold, flattened metal into the center of the old woman's palm. Sarah's fingers closed over it. She felt the shape. She felt the distortion. She felt the jagged edge where the gold had been bent by extreme force. A sound tore from her throat that was hardly human. It was a wail of 50 years of grief, finally finding its exit. She brought the ring to her lips, kissing the cold metal, rocking back and forth in the chair. "My ring," she sobbed. "My promise. He took it with him. He said he would bring it back." "Why is it crushed, Sarah?" Robert asked gently. He needed the truth. He needed to absolve the man who had died in the hardware store. "Do you know?" Sarah nodded, tears streaming from her blind eyes. "Because Jimmy wasn't just killed. He was trapped." She took a ragged breath, clutching the ring. "The letter I got from the captain, it said there was an explosion, a mortar, a tank, or a vehicle turned over. Jimmy was pinned. He was pinned underneath the metal." Linda let out a small cry, covering her mouth. "He was alive," Sarah whispered, reliving the nightmare she had constructed in her head 1,000 times. "He was alive and he was stuck. And the enemy was coming. The captain said they tried to pull him out. They tried everything, chains, ropes, men pulling until their hands bled." She turned her face toward Linda. "Peterson," she said, "your father. The letter mentioned him. It said he was the last one. The order came to retreat. The helicopters were leaving. Everyone left. But Peterson wouldn't let go of Jimmy's hand." Robert closed his eyes. The image was vivid, horrific, and holy. The jungle floor, the roaring engines, the approaching enemy fire, and two men locked hand in hand, one trapped under tons of steel, the other trapped by loyalty. "The ring," Sarah whispered, rubbing the flattened gold. "He was wearing it, and the metal that crushed him, it crushed the ring too. It fused it to his finger." She looked up, her blind eyes piercing Linda's soul. "Your father didn't steal this ring, child. He had to take it." "Take it?" Linda asked, confused. "Jimmy knew he wasn't making it," Sarah said. "He knew he was dying. He knew the others would die if they stayed to help him. So he told your father to go. He ordered him to go. But Peterson wouldn't leave him to die alone." Sarah's voice dropped to a hush. "So Jimmy gave him a mission. He told him to take the ring, to bring it back to me, to tell me that he was thinking of me when the lights went out." She paused, trembling, but the ring was stuck. It was crushed on his finger. To get it, to keep that promise. Sarah didn't finish the sentence. She didn't have to. The silence filled the room with the brutal reality of war. To retrieve the ring, to fulfill the dying wish of his friend, Peterson had to do the unthinkable. He had to use force. He had to cut or pull in the mud and the blood and the chaos. "That's why the flag is cut," Robert realized aloud. He didn't just use it as a bandage. He used it to wrap the hand, to wrap the retrieval. "He brought it home," Linda whispered, the horror and the heroism warring in her heart. "He brought it home, but he couldn't bring himself to give it to you." "Why?" Sarah asked, looking up. I waited so long." "Because of the guilt," Robert said. His voice was thick with emotion. "Survivor's guilt is a monster, Sarah." He looked at this ring, this crushed piece of gold, and he saw the moment he left your Jimmy behind. He saw the moment he had to hurt his friend to save his memory. How could he walk up to your door, hand you this, and look you in the eye when he was the one breathing air and Jimmy was in the ground? "He thought I would hate him," Sarah said softly. "He thought he didn't deserve to be the one to deliver it," Robert corrected. "He punished himself. He sentenced himself to 50 years of silence. He sat in his house, surrounded by junk, fading away, guarding this ring like a dragon guards gold. Not out of greed, but out of penance." Linda fell to her knees beside the chair. She buried her face in Sarah's lap, sobbing uncontrollably. "I'm so sorry. I didn't know. I called him a hoarder. I called him a grumpy old man. I didn't know he was carrying this." Sarah reached out and stroked Linda's hair. Her touch was gentle, maternal. "You couldn't know," Sarah said. "Men like that, they don't speak. They think their pain is a poison that will hurt us if they let it out. So they swallow it. Every day they swallow it." She held up the ring. "But he kept his promise," Sarah said. "It took him a lifetime. It took him dying to do it. But he got it back to me." Sarah turned to the table and felt for the flag. Her hands brushed the stiff, bloodied cotton. She didn't recoil. She traced the stain. "This is Jimmy's blood?" she asked. "Yes," Robert said. "And probably your father's too, Linda. Mixed together." Sarah pressed the flag to her cheek. "It's cold," she said, "but it feels like him." She sat there for a long time, the crushed ring in one hand, the bloodied flag in the other. The rain continued to fall outside, washing the world clean, but in room 304, the dirt and the blood were sacred. Finally, Sarah sat up straight. A new strength seemed to enter her frailty. "Linda," she said. "Yes?" Linda wiped her face. "You take the flag," Sarah said. "What?" Linda shook her head. "No, Sarah, it's yours. It's Jimmy." "I have the ring," Sarah said, closing her fist tight around the gold. "This ring is my promise. It's my husband. But that flag is your father." She held the folded triangle out toward Linda. "That flag is the proof that your father was a good man, that he was loyal, that he loved his brother enough to carry a burden that would break most men. You keep it. You put it in a glass box, and you tell your children that their grandfather wasn't just a clerk. He was the keeper of the oath." Linda took the flag. It felt heavier now. It felt like it weighed 1,000 pounds, but it was a good weight. The weight of dignity. "I will," Linda promised. "I'll never let it go." Robert watched them, the daughter and the widow, 2 women connected by a tragedy half a century old, healed by a $5 item from a yard sale. "Sarah," Robert said, "is there anything else we can do for you?" Sarah smiled. It was a genuine smile, one that reached her blind eyes. "You can open the curtains," she said. "I know I can't see the sun, but I want to feel it on my face. I've been sitting in the dark for a long time waiting for Jimmy to come home. Today, he finally did. Robert walked to the window and pulled back the heavy drapes. The rain had stopped. The clouds were breaking. A shaft of pale, late afternoon sunlight cut through the grey, illuminating the dust motes dancing in the air of room 304. It fell across Sarah's face, and for a moment she didn't look old. She looked like a young woman in love, waiting on a porch for a letter that finally arrived. Robert dropped Linda off at the empty house later that evening. The dumpster was still in the driveway, full of the things that didn't matter. But the flag was in the passenger seat of Linda's car, buckled in like a person. "Thank you," Linda said, leaning into the truck window. "You didn't have to do this. You could have just kept it. You could have sold it to a museum." "Some things aren't for sale," Robert said. "We don't own history, Linda. We just curate it for a little while." "I'm going to keep the house," Linda said suddenly. "I'm not going to sell it. I'm going to fix it up. I want to live where he lived. I want to understand him. He'd like that," Robert said. He watched her walk up the driveway, the flag tucked under her arm. The house didn't look like a sad, abandoned shell anymore. It looked like a fortress of memory. Robert put the truck in gear and drove away. He didn't have a trophy for his collection today. He had lost money on the gas and the time. But as he drove toward the setting sun, he felt lighter than he had in years. He thought about the millions of items sitting in attics and basements across America. Old uniforms, rusted medals, letters written in cursive that no one can read anymore. Each one a silent scream. Each one a story waiting for a listener. The world moves fast. It wants the new, the shiny, the digital. It wants to scroll past the pain. But men like Robert, and now women like Linda, they knew the truth. They knew that if you stop and look and listen to the silence, you might just hear a hero whispering his name. And that is a story worth more than $5. If you believe every life holds a story worth remembering, subscribe to this channel and join our community. End.